going live. I'm going to break in and do an intro. Yeah, I got to do screen checks and everything. I had a mic problem at 10 minutes ago, and I was able to get it straightened out. Let's just jump right in and see how Rabbi's doing today.
Doing
Shalom,
great.
Rabbi. We're live on the air. I'm just showing a screenshot. If you want to take it over.
Okay, always a pleasure to be here. I can't vouch or anything else for the mess up, but that's if you try and do good things. So Mr. S, the evil inclination, the Yetzer Hara, the angel of death. So he does a good job. So I'm surprised we don't have any more. We don't have any more mess ups, over here. But if you're trying to do good things, then we know that the other side, the dark side, so to speak, is going to work hard against us. So we're still holding in chapter 2, Mishna 11, part 10, and we'll see where this goes tonight. See if we actually finish it tonight. And we're still speaking about 5 students of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and their merits, each student having their own, specific thing that they brought to the world, which is something to be exemplified, so to speak. So the Mishna says, Rabbi Shimon ben Nesanel fears sin, right? He fears sin. Now, interesting enough, so we spoke about this idea, right? We've spoken before about that, about fear of sin. It's interesting this week's Parsha, just going to mention before we go further, that Parsha we just read, Veschanon, which talks about a lot of different things, 10 Commandments, right? Talks about the beginning, that Moshe Rabbeinu entreats God in order to get into the land. He wants to get into the land, right? So Veschanon, the gematria, the numerical value, each letter has a numerical value, right? Aleph is 1, Beis is 2, Gimel is 3. The gematria, the numerical value of Veschanon is 550, which means that Moshe Rabbeinu, as is brought down, had 500 different ways to try and entreat God. 515 different reasons why you should be able to enter the land. Now, what's the problem? God says you can't enter. So what's he doing? What's the purpose of what he's doing? God says it's a decree. You can't go in. There's nothing you can do. But isn't it true? God has a lot of rachamim. God has a lot of compassion. Maybe, we see, and I mentioned my video this week on the Torah portion of the week, that even if a knife blade is at a person's head or a person's neck, let's say, God can still save them. There can still be mercy. Now, why do I bring this up? Because Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 13, it says, Es Hashem Elokecha Tira. You should fear God. Right? You should fear the Lord your God. So it says, Moed v'Rebbe, Arav Agon Ramosh Stor Moshlita should be well. And he brings down, he says, how can God command such a thing? How can God command someone to fear him? Why? Because the command God's going to say, you should fear me. But how can that be? If a person doesn't feel it, they don't feel it in their soul, they don't feel it as part of them, how are they going to do it? Right? How are they going to feel it over here? Right? So Rebbe says, let's see the Rambam. The Rambam brings down in the laws of the foundation of Torah, chapter 2, halacha 2. And he says, what's the pathway to get fear of heaven? What's the pathway? Look into God's greatness in the world. Look into what God does in the world. Right? In other words, you look into the human body. You look at the miracles of the human body. You look at how the fact that the earth is not a little bit closer or further away from the sun. Otherwise, we'd be incinerated, or we'd be like up in your area, Yukon territory, frozen tundra, right? We'd be a frozen tundra, so to speak. So he says, if you look into what God does in the world, right? You look into God's actions, so to speak, in the world, you're going to see even a small, creepy, crawly thing that seemingly has no significance in the world. Right? You see it also, does many things. So the Rambam says that if you look into creation of the world, you look above and what goes on in the heavenly sphere, planets and all that, you look what goes on down here, that a person, when they look into it, when they delve into it, the Rambam says that's going to lead to fear of heaven. Now, that's going to depend also on the closeness that that a person feels with God. And how are you going to get that closeness? How in the world are we going to get that closeness? Limud the Torah, right? We have to learn Torah. That's going to draw us close. That's going to allow us to see God's greatness. Our hearts is going to feel it. We're going to feel God's greatness in the world. How? Through His creation. So, what does the Rambam say? The Rambam says, "Shemechashe b'devarim ha'elu." When you delve into it, when you think about these things, right? Immediately, you're going to turn back and you're going to be afraid. Why? Because what is this going to help? What is this going to represent? Right? A person's going to think what God does in the world, that's going to lead them to fear. So, maybe it brings down the name of the Chazon Ish, Rav Avram Yishai Karo, to blessed memory. He said that once, this is an amazing story. He says once he was looking at a flower. He was looking at one flower. And he was like looking into it, delving into it. And the more he delved into it, he said, I got to stop. I got to stop looking at this flower. Why? Because he delved into it so much, and he saw the greatness, and he saw God's greatness in the world, that because of the depth that he saw, he almost fainted. He almost fainted from from what he felt over here. From what he felt, the greatness of God. Oh, is he going to say, come on, what is he looking at? He's looking at a flower. So big deal, he's looking at a flower. But he looked at it to the extent where he understood and he saw God's greatness in the flower to the extent it almost made him faint. But he says, if a person, God forbid, is steeped in this world, steeped in desire, you don't feel holiness. Holiness sort of goes by the wayside. So therefore, it's for it be impossible to fix this idea of fear of heaven in a person's heart and say, you're commanded. How can you command something like that? The only way you can command something like that is the fact that a person has to look into it. Person has to delve into it. And then when a person sees God's greatness, that's a different issue. That's a different issue. Right? So then he goes on and he says, well, how's the person going to get there? So we mentioned before, it's going to be limud Torah. He's going to learn. And he should learn hours upon hours. Now, this applies more to men, certainly, than women. But if women have the opportunity to learn, they should. Right? They should learn and learn and learn. And when a person learns, what does it do? It brings us closer. It shows us God's greatness, so to speak. But there's always a but. And the but is we have to be a kli kibul. We have to be a vessel. We have to be a vessel that is going to accept, be able to accept what the Torah says. We have to be like a sponge, going to suck it up, so to speak, and suck up this fear of heaven. As we pray, one of the prayers we say every day, we say that God should uplift our hearts with this Torah and place in our hearts love of Torah and fear of Him. Now, what does that mean? It means that a person needs to learn Torah, right? You need to learn Torah, but you need a heart to open. You need an open heart to let the Torah seep in.
Right.
And if
That's
a person,
the whole point, isn't it?
Yeah, and if a person is not a kli kibul, they're not a vessel, Torah's not going to go in. But the Gemara says that a person, even if they're learning not for the sake of heaven, it will bring them, or possibly bring them, to the sake of heaven. Right? Certainly could do that. 100% could do that. So you're going to say, what about this person? What about such a person? Such a person over here, even if they're not doing it for the right reason, and they're learning Torah because they enjoy the stimulation, so to speak, the stimulation, the brain stimulation it gives them. So therefore you're going to say, how could that ever lead to fear of heaven and keeping Torah mitzvahs? Because that's the power of Torah. Even if a person's doing it for the wrong reason, who says it's not going to sink in eventually? But it must be that their heart has to be open. They have to be a vessel to be able to accept the Torah, to have a connection to it. So what do we see? So he says, even today, a person can learn hours on hours. What does that do? Yeah, it makes you tired, true. But what does that do? It can embellish, it can put in a person fear of heaven. Because when a person sees God's greatness, and you see how it works, and you see the whole package, that's a whole different thing. You're going to say, come on, I'm learning this Gemara. And the Gemara is talking about, your ox scored someone's ox. Are you liable? You're not liable. This, that. I remember many years ago, one of my big aha moments was learning something like this, seeing what the early commentaries say, seeing what the later commentaries say, and then putting the whole package together and what the halacha is, and what the final law is. Now you're going to say, come on, it sounds very, what's the word? Very academic. It sounds like, okay, picky details. And there's plenty of detail. Torah's got plenty of detail. No question about it. So, okay, one commentator makes a little bit different language than another. Do they agree? They disagree? Doesn't matter, practically speaking, all right, according to Jewish law. But I'm saying, when I went from beginning to end, you see what the Torah says. You see what the Talmud here tells me. You see how the Talmud learns. You see what the commentaries say. Then you get to the final halacha thousands of years later. So that was an eye-opener. A big eye-opener. But again, what's the whole point? The whole point is the more a person learns, the smaller they feel. But he says if you learn for, however long, continually, you're going to feel this. You're going to see God's greatness in the world. You're going to see how He runs the world. Right? So to speak. So, there's another way. My Rebbe here points out. How you're going to get fear of heaven. And that is through prayer. That's by having proper intention in prayer. Now, what does proper intention mean? Someone's going to say, Kabbalah. Isn't that, I want to have great intention. Unbelievable intention. We're not talking Kabbalah. Right? I want to ask them the Shemona Esrei, silent meditation, whatever you want to call it. They're 19 blessings. Right? The first three, the last three are always the same, whether it's during the week or on Shabbos. So the middle blessings, we ask for things. We ask for knowledge, spiritual knowledge. We ask for livelihood. We ask for health. We ask for spiritual redemption. All these different things. Right? So Rabbi Chaim says, what should your intention be when saying this prayer? Your intention should be meaning of the words. Forget Kabbalah, forget anything else. Meaning of the words. So I asked my Rebbe once, I said, what should my intention be? He said, the Rabbi Chaim says, meaning of the words. And I said, and he goes, for you, that's enough. Right? So prayer means having, at least understanding what I'm saying. But he said, you also have to remember, you're standing in front of the King of Kings. He's giving you an opportunity, a golden opportunity to request from him all your needs. He's giving you that opportunity. That's what prayer's all about. You're going to say, who am I to ask for my needs? You're right. We are an infinitesimally small speck of cosmic dust. True, you're going to think God cares what I do, what I don't do. He's too busy worrying about black holes. He's too busy worrying about, keeping the universe together. So, he's going to care what I think? Yeah, of course. He's going to care what I do. If you go to the Nefesh HaChaim, right, Rabbi Chaim of Volozhin, famous student of the Vilna Gaon more than 250 years ago. And at the very beginning, which a lot of people don't learn because it has to do with Kabbalah, right? A lot of it's in Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism. Point is, what does he say? Our actions matter. To the extent where you look at Adam and Eve, they ate from the tree, brought death to the world. Right? That's pretty significant. Death never should have been. But he says, Rabbi here said, you're standing in front of God in prayer, right? And he's connected to his creator, and he's pouring out his soul, all his needs, because God can do anything. He can change anything at any time. That's what it means. A person can merit having a leiv margish, that your heart feels that your heart's not hard as a rock over here, and you're a sponge. You want to do God's will. You want to do whatever it takes. So he says, he brings down what he heard from Rabbi Eliyahu Dessler, of blessed memory, one of the Torah giants of the last generation, and he was the spiritual guide in the Panovich Yeshiva here in Israel, and when he was in Gateshead in England. And he said in the name, Rabbi Dessler said in the name, he's originally from Kelm, that's where his father, that's where he grew up. And he said, the head of the yeshiva in Kelm, Rabbi Daniel Moshovitz, a blessed memory, Shem Yikam Damo, God should avenge his blood. What did he say? He said that prayer has to have the fire of the Hasidim in previous generations. You have to have that fire in order that, to pray properly. And he said that has a tremendous effect on a person's fear of heaven, person's ability to be awoken from the frivolousness of the time that we're living in or whatever we're doing. Right? And a person should learn Musar. A person should feel like a piece of dirt, knowing that we have, many, many levels to grow. Many levels to grow. So he's saying that, we have to pray with the fire. We have to remember, we're standing in front of the King of Kings. But we have to remember, can't the King of Kings change a person's lot in life at the blink of an eye? Right? Blink of an eyelash, like I spoke about last week in my video on the Torah portion of the week. So he continues. I'll hit one other aspect of this in 1 second. But he continues, and he says that Rav Dessler said that the righteous of the previous generation, they prayed properly. They prepared, they prayed properly. Our generation, we need to learn Musa. We need to learn books of ethics, Path of the Just, Shari Tshuva, Gate to Repentance, The Ways of the Righteous. These are all good books to go through. starting now as we're preparing to go into the month of Elul, which is another few weeks, which is going to be the month before Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. So he says, we got to learn Musar. We got to learn, feel like a piece of dirt to a certain extent. And we have to pray every day on a regular basis and try to the best of our ability to have intention. Even though our mind's going to wander, probably, lose intention after a certain amount of time, whatever it is. Nonetheless, that's what we're going to strive for. That's what we're going to strive for. Like we said, you place in your heart love and fear of God. We say every day. Love and fear of God, right, on a daily basis. When a person does that and they look into God's greatness in the world and what he does and nature, and all that, plus he's learning Musar, you're going to be somewhere. You're going to be somewhere in this world. Now, so he's telling you a way to get the fear of heaven, right? To get to the, we're not talking, unbelievable high level fear of heaven, right? What's the lowest level fear of heaven? That a person keeps Torah and mitzvahs because they're afraid they're going to fry in hell forever. That's what they're afraid of. That's a low level. But a high level of fear of heaven is what? Understanding how God runs the world. Understanding that he takes care of nature. Everything in nature. And how we have to place in our heart this fear. But he says, if you look into nature, as we said before, that'll bring us to an unbelievable awareness. Unbelievable awareness of God. Now, let's take it one step further. What is the problem? What is the problem over here? Why is it hard? Right? Why is it hard to acquire this? So simple thing is that it's going to be hard to acquire because what's going to happen is a person is going to say, well, what's going on is I'm not getting my prayers answered. So when they don't get their prayers answered, what's going to be? They're going to be despondent. They're going to say, come on. God's not answering me here. And if he's not answering me, why do I keep praying? Right? Seemingly, I'm not getting anywhere. Nothing is helping me. I'm still stuck in the same situation. Right? And this comes up quite a bit because people say, listen, I'm doing this every day. I took this on every day. I even stopped watching the CFL, right? I stopped watching the CFL. Come on. That's such a huge thing. Isn't God going to give me what I want? And you see, even maybe that doesn't get answered. And something else doesn't get answered. Whatever the case, whatever a person needs. So a person's going to say, why bother? Why am I going to bother over here? I prayed today. Bunch of times during the day. I prayed yesterday, prayed the day before. I'm going to pray tomorrow. This is going on for a long time. And if it's going on for a long time, what's the point? Why should I bother? Right? Because I didn't get my answer. And what's the answer? The answer is that even if, let's say, you're not getting what you want now, whatever it is, God's helping you in other ways you don't even know. So what are we going to say over here? We're going to say it doesn't matter how much time's gone by. You think, okay, I'm not being answered this, or I'm not being answered that, but you don't know what God's doing for you in the background. You have no idea. Right? You have no idea what's going on. No idea whatsoever. So if that's true, a person's going to say, why bother? Why should I continue? Why in the world, if God's not going to answer me or give me what I need now, what am I doing wrong? Because the person's going to think, guess what? Whatever I do, it's not going to help. But isn't it true? Can't God change anything overnight? God can change anything overnight. He's got that ability. 100% he's got that ability. But we live in an instantaneous generation. So why am I helped over here? Why am I not getting what I want over here? But prayer never goes to waste. It may not help you in exactly what you're going through now, maybe. Maybe you didn't get answered for that. But it could be God's doing other things. Prayers are helping out, in other ways, which we don't see, which we don't fathom. But the point is also, when a person prays, we have to pray like we don't deserve anything. We have to show our credentials. We have to ask for what our needs are. But it has to be asked in a certain way. So my Rebbe says, a lot of times people don't get answered in prayers because they don't know how to pray. They don't pray right. That's the problem. They're not giving of themselves. They just think, okay, God, I need this, I need that. And God knows the depth of my heart, where it's coming from. Now, that might be true. But he says, what's the word v'yeschanon? Right? We'll see what the definition over here is. Right? How they translate it over here. Right? V'yeschanon, chapter, where are we? Chapter 3, verse 23. It says, v'yeschanon el Hashem be'esahu ahi lemor. So the translation is, implored Hashem at that time, saying. What's another word for implore? To beseech. To really want something really bad. That's a definition. Total definition. Is that you have to want it more than anything else. And you have to pray like that. That you're beseeching God whether you deserve it or not. Doesn't matter. That's it. And if not, you're asking for your needs, you're mouthing the words, but the words come off empty. So therefore, God doesn't answer. God won't answer. Why not? Because you don't beseech him. You don't pray like your life depends on it. If you would pray like your life depends on it, different story. I'll give an example, and it should never happen to any of us. Give an example. A person goes through, let's say, yearly checkup, a bunch of things. Person takes a blood test. Doctor, get a call from the doctor's office, come in right away. You got to come in right away. That person is going to be scared out of their wits. What do they find? Like, worst case scenario. They're playing all the worst case scenarios. You don't think at that point, the person's going to say Psalms to heal him. And he's going to pour it all out to make sure the end result is going to be good. That end result, they're going to say, oh, it was a mistake. Really is nothing. Or whatever it is. But see, a person gets news like that. Wouldn't they pray differently? Oh, yeah. They would pray 100% differently. 100% true. That's what they would do. We don't pray like our life depends on it. There are stories. We don't want to scare anyone. There are stories where people don't wake up in the morning. We say a prayer in the morning, a prayer in the morning. Thank God he returned my soul to me. My holy soul. Well, guess what? If he didn't return your soul to you, you die. We understand a person sleeps, their soul goes up and doing whatever it's doing in the next world. But if you have the merit to wake up the next day, what happened? God gave you your soul back. So you're going to be ecstatic. You're alive. No matter what you're going through, you're alive. Because the alternative, as we say, is always worse. We don't think in those terms. We think, oh, I didn't get enough sleep. Oh, this hurts me. That hurts me. I got this to worry about, that to worry about. Well, isn't the alternative worse? Alternative is worse. Alternative is worse. So you're going to say, wow, I need a lot more difficulty. If I had a lot more difficulty in my life, I'd pray differently. We don't want that. We pray every day. That shouldn't happen. We shouldn't have these difficulties. But what happens? We don't grow without them. So a person's going to think, I go through this, I go through that. I'm asking God, help me find clarity. Take this away. Do something. We don't get answered. Seemingly we don't get answered. Or we don't think we get answered. Maybe we don't know how to interpret what's going on. Maybe. But in the end, what's really going on? Even if you're not answered specifically for that, or you misread the answer, whatever the case is, God's helping you in other ways that you don't know. They have no idea. But you're going to say, I need to be helped in this area. So I'm not going to play God in, right? I'm not going to put on my funny George Burns glasses, my funny mustache, and say why I'm not doing this, not doing that, not giving it to you. We don't know. Nobody knows. But see, what do I see over here? Moshe Rabbeinu prays 515 different prayers. Different prayers. And God himself says, enough. I'm not letting you in. Because he would have prayed more, God would have acquiesced. But he told him to stop, and he stopped. 515 different prayers. God told him, you're not going into the promised land. I'm not allowing you to go in. He didn't give up. We give up very easily. A person does, a crossword puzzle. They play Sudoku or whatever, and they get stuck. What's the first thing they do when they get stuck? They cheat. They look in the back for the answer. Right? They don't want to think. They don't want to work hard. They don't want to sweat over here. They want the easy way out. Well, you know what? The Ramchal says in Path of the Just, we're here to struggle in this world. You're not going to get the easy way out. There's no easy way out. You're here to struggle. People may try and take the easy way out, but essentially there isn't. You got to deal with life. Life can be hard. Life 100% can be hard. We can struggle in all kinds of different things. But see, Moshe Rabbeinu didn't give up. The Talmud says, the sword is at your neck. You don't give up. I mean, you might die, but God can have mercy. God can take you out of it. He doesn't have to, but he certainly could. And there, I'm sure many, many times in history, person thought for sure they were a goner or whatever, and guess what? They were taken out of it. Something happened. Something stopped, seemingly out of nowhere. So says my Rebbe over here. He says, you want to have fear of heaven? He says, you got to look into things. You got to think. Look at the Chazon Ish, a blessed memory. Almost fainted from the enormous greatness of seeing a flower. And understanding God's greatness. Because then your mind goes crazy. Then your mind says, wow, look what God does for this. Seemingly a small, meaningless flower. But think about it in the bigger scheme of things. They give off oxygen. And they give off oxygen gives us the ability to breathe. Because they didn't give off oxygen, we'd all be dead. That'd be bad. I think everyone would agree that would be bad. But if you think about that's awesome. That's awesomeness of God. The person might say, yeah, very well, but, I got bills to pay. I got other things I got to deal with. I got my baseball team, 6 games out. More, only 40 games to go, whatever. Got things to worry about. You're gonna say I'm gonna sit there and worry about sniffing looking at a plant, at a flower. But see, we get sidetracked. This is what's really important. This is what makes the world go round. This is what makes us who we are. When we think about all the greatness of what he does. So if that's true, if that's 100% true, shouldn't we pray differently? Shouldn't we make blessings differently? There are a million things we should do differently. We don't think about this because we take these things for granted. Because we're too busy, as my Rebbe here says. If you're steeped in desire of this world, you're not going to get there. You're not going to get there. The holiness is going to dissipate. It's going to evaporate. You're not going to have a connection to it. How's the only connection you're going to have? The only connection is going to come through what? Through limud Torah. Through learning Torah. That's where it's going to come from. You learn more, you learn less. Whatever it is, the more a person learns, the more he puts fear of heaven inside of himself. Because he sees the bigger picture. When we look at a little thing in front of us, and this little thing bothers me, and this is hard, and all that, and that's all true. Not saying not. Not saying we don't have to put our best foot forward. We do. But what's the bottom line? We lose sight of what the bigger picture is. Because we suffer. We have difficulty. We go through hard things. Everybody does. See, comes along Mr. S, right? The evil inclination, the angel of death, whatever you want to call him. And he's doing a great job. Causing me all these issues. But he says, I forget the bigger picture. We get lost in this world. We get sidetracked by things that don't matter. Listen, someone will say, Rabbi, I got to chill. What do you want? Can't learn Torah all the time. My brain can't tell. Okay. But don't get distracted. Person's in a bad environment, got to leave that environment. Person hanging around with the wrong people, you got to leave. Because that has a negative effect. It'll have a much worse effect on you than a positive effect you may have on them. So how does the person get out of it? How does the person get out of the trap? Torah. That's how they get out of it. That's the only way out of it. Torah, Musar, learning ethics, that's the only way. Right, someone asks, why am I so attracted to things of this world? Very simple, because they're tempting. You think when Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge, you think whatever they ate from, was rotting? Wasn't rotting. Didn't look unappetizing. Looked extremely appetizing. That was part of the enticement. Part of it. So there are a lot of things that are enticing, that are bad for us. Someone asked me, earlier this question, and that is, how do you judge someone who's addicted to hard drugs? You judge them harshly, or should you have compassion on them? This is your expertise over here, but
it's a tough call, because I know here in Canada, they're treating it more like a medical disease rather than a personal choice, and it makes it a little more difficult legally here in my country than in many others.
So I was going to deal with this in my Q&A, but I'll mention it now. Maybe I'll deal with it this week also. Right? And that is that you could say, well, you got to feel sorry for people, who are on drugs. They're not on drugs by choice, per se. They feel it's a way to deal with the difficulties of life. Whatever they've gone through, that is their coping mechanism. so to speak. Then what happens? Then it becomes a need. Then they get, then they get addicted. So one part is that really, I could say, why should I have compassion on them? They're doing it yourself. They're doing it to themselves. So you're going to say, Rabbi, that's cruel. You're right. They're doing it to themselves, but look at what they've gone through in life. Could be abuse, could be psychological abuse, physical abuse, could be many different things. Why?
Oh, yeah, they all have a story.
Everybody's got a story, right? So I'm not, we should be compassionate. It's hard to be compassionate when people do it to themselves. And then they commit crimes and they do other things.
Oh, and have a long list of needs and expect entitlement
right,
to everything.
But they're going to claim I'm a victim of the system. I'm what they say in Three Stooges land? I'm a victim of circumstance, right? I'm a victim of what goes on in the world. I'm a victim. Now that's true. That may very well be true. But at the same time, now I'm not talking about mental illness. Mental illness is a whole nother thing. But something like this, they'll justify because this is what they've gone through. This is their coping mechanism. Now you're right. Everybody and their mother has a story. We all have stories. The question is how you deal with it. Right, I'll give one example. I mean, someone not on drugs per se, I don't think. He's not full time, but someone had a business. They had a franchise. Let's say of a store or a restaurant. Let's say they had a franchise doing very well. And what happened? They got business advice, open up another one. This one's doing well, open up another one. What's going to happen with the other one? You make more money. So you invest in that, you make a lot more money. Person took the advice, opened up this other store, and didn't do so well. Not only didn't it do so well, it ate up the profit to the other store, and basically, person went bankrupt. Person ended up, shutting down. Now, till this day, this person still has claims. Got bad advice, blew his money, so to speak. He got bad advice, okay? See, if you don't think in Torah and mitzvahs, then I can understand if you rip roaring mad. You got bad advice, now look what I'm doing, look what I have to go through, blah, 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 okay? But see, something like this happened a long time ago. Didn't just happen. Right? Happened 25 years ago. Whatever. It happened more than 20 years ago. The person still has claims. And is still mad. So what would I tell that person? Go to therapy. You got to go to therapy. Deal with it. You're right. You got bad advice. It happens in business. Business go up and down all the time. Some stay up longer, down long, whatever it is. Right? But you got to get over things. Now, if you believe in Torah, and you believe in the fact that God runs the world, and God's in charge, etc. So therefore, God took this away as a test. Right? It's a test. This person's not going to see this as a test. It's going to say, I don't believe in God in all this. Money is a test. Working on bad character traits, many things happen, is a test. A spouse, children are tests. We all go through tests. We don't gain. We don't grow if you don't have tests. So now, imagine if that person understood, or imagine if God would have told me, 20 years ago, he would have said, listen, I'm going to take away everything. But in the next 20 years, this is going to happen, that's going to happen. You got to move to a neighborhood you don't live in. You got to marry off two of your kids, and the other families live one building away from another. You'll be up and down, but look what's gonna come later. Now, if we knew the future, you probably still wouldn't necessarily sign up for it. But in the end, you see all these different things the person went through. And then you see, oh yeah, now this a little bit this makes sense. Or that makes sense. But see, we're not given that information. See, we have enough difficulty going through the difficulty itself and then having to deal with it. But we're not giving that information. But what if we were told, I'm going to take away your business. You're going to invest in another business. Right? Sorry, in the same business, another franchise. But what's going to happen is you're going to go bankrupt. But instead of going why are you going to go bankrupt over here? Because really, I should have taken your life. Really, you deserved to have your life taken away. But I spared you because your wife, your kids, whatever. And I spared you. I'm going to give you another opportunity. Now, if a person knew that, and they knew they were going to die, wouldn't that answer up over here? To a certain extent? They'll say, but I want the money too. So what's God going to say? Can't be a pig. You don't get both. But if someone heard that, wouldn't their life take on a different meaning? But people look at the present. Look what I'm going through now. Okay, now things look really bad. And maybe a person goes through ups and downs, and maybe a lot of downs. Okay, so now what? So we're talking about prayer. So prayer never goes to waste. So you say, listen, I might have done this. Person prays to God, I might have done this. I deserve to be punished. I want you to have mercy. I'm working on this. I'm working on that. I want you to have mercy. And God doesn't answer. And you say, God, what's the mantra? The mantra always is, God, you're the one in charge. You're the one who can change anything the bat of an eyelash. You can change anything. But you're going to say, but I've been stuck in this for however long. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I kind of laugh in a certain way. Someone says, yeah, I've been going through this for 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is. And okay, I'm not saying that, that's an easy thing to go through. I said, I had an odyssey for 17 years. That went on for. I have a certain level of closure. Doesn't make me righteous by any stretch. If I only went through it for 3 months, yeah, my life would be totally different. In many ways. But it's not. And I'd have something in my face for 17 years. Kind of like putting iodine on a wound. Or salt, let's say better, salt on a wound. You know what it's like to be like when you're down to be kicked in the head? Imagine your head is gushing blood. So I'm going to help you. I'm going to come and save you. What do? They bring a box of salt. Imagine the pain. See, it's good therapy for me. Imagine the pain. How do you deal with that? It's a lot of things people go through. A lot of difficulty. That's also true. Right? That's also true. People say, woe to me, this happened, that happened. Okay. But someone's going to say, and someone would say to me, but that happened a long time ago. And that, like someone said to me, that's the reality. Deal with it. Whoopi Goldberg, suck it up. That's what happened. Now, that person seemingly was trying to apologize. That doesn't sound like an apology to me. They're just saying, deal with it. So I did deal with it in many ways. Sometimes better, sometimes not, whatever. But the reality is, if you believe everything happens because God wills it, whether I understand it or not, so now it's between you and God. Now the question is, how do I deal with it? So a person can live with this mentality and say, woe to me, what's going to happen? They'll never function in society. They won't function. Because it's always, this one did this one did that. Like I said, I do know someone still rip-roaring mad. Will blame this one, blame that one. This happened 20 years ago. So what's the answer? Get therapy. Either get therapy or learn how to deal with it. Now, even if you know how to deal with it, even if you understand, God's the one running the world and all that, and he's trying to fix me up, that's a different way of looking at it. and you're yelling at the stick, right? The idea that, person hits a dog with a stick, the dog goes after the stick. So we're rip-roaring mad. And we're gonna yell and scream, the person did this, that, and the other thing. Now, are they guilty? Let's say they're guilty, okay? We'll agree they're guilty. So what? But that person is being used by God like a stick. So you're going to say, but it's painful, and look what they did. I agree. Not going to say not. Now the question is, how am I going to deal with it? How am I going to deal with it? How am I going to look at it? Am I going to cry over spilled milk? Yeah, you're going to worry about survival. True. Definitely true. Make you think differently. True. But what did it do for you in the bigger scheme of things? See, we don't look at the bigger scheme of things. We don't think about the future because we have enough difficulty dealing with the present. But Moshe Rabbeinu, 515 different types of prayer. He didn't give up. He didn't get depressed. Because even though God tells him, you have to go, you have to take care of Midian. You have to go against the Midianites. Then you're going to die. What does he do? Let's go to war. He could have dilly-dallied, knowing he's going to die. He could have waited months before going to war. He said, that's what God wants. That's what I'm supposed to do. You're going to say, we're not Moshe Rabbeinu. We're not at that level. Could very well be. But you're right. We have a defeatist attitude. Because we live in a cream puff generation. I can tell you certain things, which I'm not going to disclose. Personal things I'm going through right now. Right? I'm waiting to see how it turns out. I said, God, you got a good plan here. Let's see. Right? Being squeezed this way, that way, the other way. Let's see. Let's see what you're going to do. You're the one in charge. You're calling the shots. Let's see how it's going to come out. I said once the other day, recently, something else had happened. And I said, God, you're giving me a golden opportunity. See, I listen to my own musser sometimes. I always tell my wife, if I listen to half the things I say, I look different, which is true, right? But at the end of the day, something happened, unexpected. I said, okay, I don't know what you want over here, but you're giving me a golden opportunity to work on this character trait or that or whatever. You give me a golden opportunity. People are going to say, what are you, a masochist? You're looking for trouble? No, not looking for trouble. Trouble finds me. That's just the way it works, right? We try and do good things. What do you think? The evil inclination sits still? Doesn't sit still. You could be hammered on 10 different sides. You're in quicksand. You're like, God, you're the one in charge. You're the one in charge. You're the one who runs things, not me. So the mantra is, you can change anything, the bad of an eyelash. The bad of an eyelash. Certain things happened recently, out of nowhere. Boom. Not, totally not expected. When it's a plus for you, it's good. When it's a minus, not so good. Right? But there's a divine plan. We don't always see the divine plan. We don't always understand. But in hindsight, like I said, my wife would always say, my book that I wrote, she said, you can't finish it. You're still living it. True? You're still going through it. I've had a number of things over the, last number of years, but unbelievable. But other things that, okay, you get on both sides. But we miss the bigger picture. When you see the bigger picture, you say, fine, you have this odyssey for 17 years. You went from Israel to Chile to New Jersey. 3 years later, right? You come back to Israel. 2 continents, 3 years. You're like, well, what's the point here? Right? What's going on over here? Live in the same community the last 13 years, starting 14 years, where in the end, wouldn't have thought necessarily living in this place, but okay. Checked it out, stayed here, happy here, so to speak. 2 of my kids get married. Right? Beautiful, beautiful families that happen to live one building away from the other. Now, the odds of that are about 0. We've spoken about this before. But I want to show that a person can be tossed around like a rag doll in this world, and then you see other things that happen, and like you're whistling Dixie over here. I mean, I don't know how to whistle Dixie or do the moonwalk, but think about it. Think about it. Be the richest person in the world. Right? On that topic, I mentioned, I know someone going through a very hard time. I got a 20-year-old daughter, beautiful daughter, having trouble finding a match. Okay, it might be some issues here and there, but, 3 out of my 4 kids married the first one they met, which is, not, I wouldn't say so common. Wouldn't say so common over here. But like someone said, when my girls are ready to date, they go. They go relatively quick. So, I told my wife I'd rather have, money issues or other things than, have my kids sit at home and not be married. So that's worth a lot. That is worth a lot, right? I had for lunch today, so I had almost all my kids here. So I had 16 people at my table. Pretty loud. Pretty loud. I had 6 grandkids. The oldest grandkid is 7, 8. So it was, it was pretty loud. Pretty loud. But you know what? That's what it's supposed to be. That's the way it should be. They were singing, there were words of Torah, there were discussions. It's a tremendous thing. So I'm only one person. The link in the chain going back to Mount Sinai. Got 2 brothers into married, right? So my line's the only line that matters, in my parents' family, right? Or my mother's family, let's say, all, down. So that's a huge thing. But okay, what about this? What about that? What about this? I'm not saying it's perfect. There are issues. I'm not going to say not. But think about it. You're sitting there like a king, right? Sitting there like a king. But it's loud. Someone spilled something. Someone broke something. Okay, that's part of it. That's part of what it is. But at the end of the day, you sit there like a king. It's a huge thing. See other people suffering in other ways. I'm like, wow, I'm glad I don't have that. By every wedding, as I told my wife, I said, money problems, I'll take it any time. Getting my kids married to good families, it's worth everything. It's worth everything. My daughter has a step grandfather on her husband's side. His step grandfather have his 90th birthday this week. So she put up a thing saying, so great for you to be able to come. You're part of the family. It's a beautiful thing. Not everyone merits things. You get married, and your kid's married. The other side, if you get along, it's a blessing. It's a blessing, not a guarantee. Not to mention that the families, if they mix, they mix well and they get along and all that. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing to see. There can be complications. There can be other things. A lot of things could happen. So what about the bigger picture? What about the bigger picture? Right? We forget. Because what we're going through now seems impossible to get over. And it could very well be. Could very well be. A person, let's say, they get jilted. Or they're in a relationship, it doesn't work out. Right? That happens a lot. And they think, oh, this person was the right one. And, and their heart's broken. Right? It happens. 100% it happens. Yeah, it happens. So you're going to say, what, isn't it hard to go through? Yeah, it is. But see, in the bigger scheme of things, a person may realize as time goes on, this person was never for me. What did I ever see in such a person? Or they'll see that they were going in a different direction. But the problem is they got crushed right now. And they're going through that difficulty. And again, I'm not going to deny the fact it's not difficult. But even if it's difficult, think of the bigger scheme. The bigger scheme of things. It wasn't meant to be. So you're going to say, come on, it's so easy for you to say. Wasn't meant to be. So I've been through it also. Also, was hard. Was very hard. But you know what? Months later, What was the realization? It never should have been in different ways. In other words, when you see in the future what happened, and obviously God knows best over here. You saw what, that would take my life in totally different direction. Totally different direction. I don't think I'd be doing this if I was, could be, maybe yes, maybe no, I don't know. Right? But a lot of things I wouldn't have done. I would have ended up in Israel, that's for sure. I would have developed a connection with my Rebbe for 25 years. That wouldn't have happened. There were a lot of things. So, thank God it didn't work. But you're going to say you can see that in hindsight, right? You can see it in hindsight. When you're going through it, everyone will agree, it's painful. It's painful, but, there's always the but. And what's the but over here? The but is, what did I gain? What did I learn? Did I learn anything from this situation? Or am I in that situation where I kept doing the same things wrong? In other words, this happened before, happened a time before. It's like a creature of habit. Bad creature of habit. Right? That you never want. You don't want to keep making the same mistake. Because when you keep making the same mistake, then it's very hard to fix. It's kind of like, we use this sports parable here, except when the Cubs won the World Series. Imagine a person, a diehard Cubs fan, or a diehard Red Sox fan. It's only 1 year apart. They won the World Series. One was 1917, one was 1918, until the Red Sox finally won the World Series. So you're going to say, come on, don't you learn? They're always going to blow it. They're going to choke in September. Like, isn't that the norm? Okay, but maybe one time they're actually gonna win. So if you're a creature, so that's a bad example. But like if you're a creature of bad habit, what does it do? It spirals. And then once a person becomes entrenched in the habit or whatever it is, it continues to the point where you don't stop. Where it just keeps going and going and going. So we gotta break these bad habits. Right, says Rabbi Chaim, you gotta, we'll be lucky if we break one bad habit. One bad habit. But you see, the question was, I really got off topic here, but the question was, someone who's addicted to hard drugs, how do we view it? So, we gotta have compassion. I think we do have to have compassion. I don't think it's their choice. But you see, it's hard to have compassion when people make the same mistake over and over. And they, you want to help something out. Let's say a person had money and they want to, the person's down on their luck. They want to help them out, but they know, what are they going to do with that money? They're going to gamble. They're going to use that money to gamble. They're going to use that money on drugs. So I remember when I was in New York, a lot of, people living on the streets or whatever, someone's asking for money. So a friend of mine said, I have a bagel. He said, I'm willing to give you a bagel. I'm not going to give you money, but I'll give you a bagel if you're hungry. He's like, no, I want money. So kept walking. You can't feed a bad habit. That's irresponsible. Because if you know they're going to use it for something that's bad, then you're helping them. You're helping them go in that wrong direction. You're going to say, but they have free choice. You're right. But if a person knows it's a downward spiral, and they're going to just use it for that, then yeah, there's no mitzvah to help. There's a mitzvah to get them help in other ways. But if they're going to blow the money in other things, then yeah. But the reality is, we should have some compassion. Because there's not a person's choice. I don't think most people desire to be a drug addict. Even how they're portrayed, on TV or in the movies. Nobody's signing up for that life. Nobody wants that. Why does someone get involved in it? Simple. They've gone through trauma. They have no self-esteem. They use it to cope. It's a coping mechanism. People use drugs. People, they overeat, they bulimia, other things. right? It's a coping mechanism. So we should have compassion. I think we should have compassion. Doesn't mean I have to help them in a way that's going to be destructive. And a lot of times it's hard, to find that compassion when you just see someone ruining their life. And I'm sure, you see it on a regular basis, must be hard. These people go through hard things. People go through hard things. It's true. But if I'm going to give them money, they're just going to buy drugs with it, then there's no point. The point is get them to a shelter, get them help, get them real help. That's not real help. Now, it might be unbelievable pain for them and this and that, okay. But you're abetting somebody that's doing something wrong. So how can you have, when a person looks at that and they see this negative behavior, it's hard to have compassion. See, I'm playing both sides of the argument here. It's hard to have that compassion because the person's doing it to themselves. I don't care why. They're doing it to themselves. So by doing it to themselves, and you want to help, how can you help in such a situation? You can say, listen, I'm willing to help you with this, or help you with that, or whatever. They say, no, I just want money.
Yeah, they're just abusers.
They're abusers, right? Or let's say they're gambling addicts. And that money, they're going to blow it on a horse race. They're going to blow it in a casino. Or they're going to blow it wherever. You're not helping them. You're totally not helping them. So, on the one hand, I can have compassion, 100%, because no one wants to see people like that. I mean, these people were normal people at some point. Maybe they had some, I don't know, psychological issues, some other things maybe going on also. But they were normal people at one point. They didn't just sign up for this. You take someone, I'll give an example. You take someone like Nissim Black, and you hear his story. He grew up in a crack house, pretty much. Not far from you in Seattle, right? He grew up in like a crack house. Parents were busted, relatives busted, and for him it was a miracle, he says. On himself, he got out. He got into Christianity, they got into Judaism, and eventually converted. It's an amazing story. But he could have said, what can I do? This is what I'm born into. This is who I'm going to be. This is what I'm going to do. So you help somebody like that, and they're going to do deviant things, forget it. Why would you do that? You wouldn't. You want to help them in other ways, rehabilitate in other ways, and you can help them, okay. Right? But when you see someone destroying their lives, and you help them once, you help them twice, and they still went in this deviant, wrong behavior, whatever it is, you're not helping them. It's hard to have compassion. Then when they come back another time, you're going to say, no, not helping you here. I'll help you with this, but I'm not helping you with that. Because that's just going to abet them. That's just going to help them continue what they're doing. Right? That 100%. Right? So the reality is, there are two things. One is what they're going through, which cannot be easy. So therefore, we should have compassion. We should have compassion for them. But we shouldn't have as much compassion when we're helping them do what they shouldn't be doing. That's the word. You don't want to enable what they're doing. That you don't want to do. So it's sort of a catch-22. Sort of a catch-22 here. One other thing that I want to mention is that, and again, this really something we really spoke about before, but, I'll just reinforce the point that my Rebbe brings on also, that a person who has fear of heaven and understands God runs the world, God's in charge, etc., and he recognizes the power of sin. He recognizes the power of what they do wrong and what the effect is. Potential effect. When a person, a Jew, God forbid, speaks badly against someone else, speaks Lashon Hara, so you kill 3 people. You kill the person you said it against, you kill the person who listened, and you kill yourself in the process for saying it. So you're going to say, but everyone knows it's true, It's not hurting anybody and this and that, but there are many negative effects. Many negative effects. So when a person realizes that what they've done, I mean, we used Adam and Eve as a good example. One event changed the world totally. God went to plan B, brought death to the world. Never should have been. So here a person understands the power of what we do, the negative effect it can have. So how they reach this high spiritual levels, we mentioned, because they've contemplated God's greatness on the one hand and seen what he does in the world, the human body, nature, etc., and the sheer worthlessness of man. You're going to say, come on, you got people who can win the Nobel Prize. They can, they can have great minds. They can have, great inventions, all kinds of, all kinds of things, all kinds of things that they do that might be great, let's say, in the secular world. But when you're looking at the bigger picture, right, you're looking at the bigger picture, which we mentioned before. The bigger picture tells you we don't know anything, right? We're totally useless over here. One example, right? One example. We're not going to get political here. One example, is what COVID did to the world. One effect that it had, whether you're pro-vaccine, not, whatever, it doesn't matter. One effect that you see is it shut down the entire world, and that the medical establishment looked like a bunch of fools. That's what it did. You believe in masks, you don't believe in masks, this, that, the numbers are skewed, doesn't matter. Even if the numbers are skewed, doesn't matter. The doctors didn't have a clue what to do. Didn't have a clue. People claiming, got to wear masks and this and that. Masks didn't bring it down either. In different ways. So the left didn't know what the right was doing. So what did God show? Mishna, the Gemara in Kedushin says, Rov Sheberoifim begehenim. The majority of doctors go to hell. Why the majority? It says Tov. Tov Sheberoifim begehenim. Even the best of doctors in this world go to hell. Why? Because even the best, they're all heretics. They all think it's the power of my hands. It's the power of what I'm doing. And they take God out of the picture. And over here, God says, you really think you're in charge? You really think you know what's going on in the world? I'm going to show you. I'm going to take this microbe, whether it was manufactured by the Chinese or not, or whatever you want to call it. I'm going to take this microbe, I'm going to affect everybody. I'm going to affect the entire world. Again, doesn't matter. Numbers are skewed, they're not skewed, it's irrelevant. What's relevant over here is the medical establishment totally caught off guard. You're going to say, come on, look how much we know. Look how much medicine knows today. Knows quite a bit. But there are a lot of things they don't know. Take one little microbe and look at the effect. Look at the effect. Just on the medical establishment. Forget about everything else. Just on the medical establishment itself. They look like a bunch of fools. Bunch of fools. They said this will work. No. Said this will work. No. And why eventually did it dissipate? I mean, it's still around. Why did it dissipate, so to speak? Because God wanted it. But he wanted to make a point. 4 years. He wanted to make a point. Numbers are spiking here. They're talking about going back to masks. Good luck. Good luck trying to enforce that. But it's crazy. 4 years? I mean, how long does SARS virus last? A couple years. It didn't get to this effect. Didn't get to this point. Why did it disappear? Not because of any vaccine. Not because of anything else. You know why it disappeared? Because God wanted it to disappear. God made his point and that was it. But it disappeared. See, man thinks, oh, look how great we are. Look at this, look at that. They have no power. They have zero power. Rabbi points out also, talk about the power of man. We went through a couple weeks back, a number of days, and we're not going to get into politics. Not going to get into politics here, but a number of days of all these missiles being fired across Israel. Right? What did the Israeli army say? Look, we got these Patriot missiles. 95% knocked them out. Knocked them out. Right? But there were thousands of them sent all over Israel. And more than 200, interesting enough. More than 200 fell on the side of the Arabs, killed. Killed many Arabs in Gaza. Because they blew up in their own side. I should get the stupidest people trying to light these things off. I don't know. But they blew up in their own side. What does that show you? What does that show you? God runs the world over here. You're going to attack the Jews? Guess what? All these missiles go, they don't think it's direct. Pretty miraculous. It's unbelievable chesed. Unbelievable act of loving kindness over here. Comes along, these atheists, the Arab Rav, the mixed multitude, the government saying, you know why? You know why they didn't hit anybody? Because we have Patriot missiles. Because it's koach otzim v'yodi yasu achayil. The power of my hand did all this. Even Ben Gurion himself, he said, what's the purpose of the army? He said the purpose of the army is to show we're not like other armies in the world. Not just we fight against our enemies, but he says it's the whole point of being an Israeli, right? Fight in the army, fight against our enemies, in order to establish future generations, the younger generations, that are going to also fight for the land. And why are they going to fight for the land? Because they believe we got the power. Forget nuclear weapons. We got the power. We got the strongest army in the Middle East. But it's the power of our hands. That's what Ben Gurion said. It's the power of my hands of what I do. That's going to accomplish. That's going to make us successful. And they do the same thing. They say the exact same thing. They say the same thing today. Oh, all the missiles, we got Patriots. It's the power of our intelligence. It's the power of the army that's stopping them. So maybe here says, I beg to disagree. And nothing to do with that. It's the fact that God runs the world. But how can you explain the fact they send out all these missiles and more than 200? It's not a small number. If you tell me it's a couple here and there, they misfire, it's one thing. Right? Imagine. It's hard to imagine. You light off this missile and it comes back and blows up your house. They send it in the wrong direction. Whatever. A couple here reminds me of it's like Bugs Bunny or Daffy Duck or something, like one of these things.
Wile E. Coyote.
Yeah, and it gets blown up. He goes off a cliff, like all these things. All these things. Now, unless you're the biggest fool in the world lighting these things, okay, so you tell me one here, one there. You want to tell me that 20% or more of the missiles backfire and kill your own people in your own place. 20%, that's a high number.
That's huge.
That is you can't explain it and say it was a misfire. 200? 200 out of 1,000? That's quite a bit. I mean, again, either you got the stupidest people setting them off, which could be, or there's going to be something else. This is an absolute miracle. It's an absolute miracle. Forget the fact the other missiles don't hit anything. They end up in open areas, most of them. But the fact that 200 end up in the same area and they kill their own people, you can't explain that according to nature. You see, that's not the power of the army. That's not their power running in and massacring and stopping them and all that. That's not their power. That had nothing to do with them. You're going to say, wow, look at that. That's the Israelis' luck. No, no. It's not about luck over here.
The
These missiles,
sovereignty of Hashem. Yeah.
these missiles, when they hit in the south, they're like 5 kilometers away, 10 kilometers away. They're not that far. I mean, Gaza to Ashkelon made 20 kilometers, 30 kilometers, something like that. They're not that far. So again, there are two things going on. Either people don't know how to shoot missiles, or God is redirecting those missiles. Because you can't tell me 20% is a huge number. It's a huge number. So you can't say that goes according to nature. Right? But what did Ben Gurion, what did he want to instill in the people, in the army, and pass that down to all future generations, is the fact that it's the power of my hand. It's the power of the army that's doing this. Rabbi says, no. This is to wake us up and to show us it has nothing to do with the power of them. What did the power of the Israelis have to do with the fact that these missiles end up in the same area where they came from? Right? It's unheard of. Unheard of. Someone here says, yeah, maybe it's global warming. It happened, maybe. Who knows? We come up with all kinds of theories. All kinds of theories. Or they're going to say, wow, unbelievable. A lot of these missiles misfired. 200? 20%? I don't know. So the point is the fact that God's in charge. God's the one who runs the world. Right? When it comes to having fear of heaven, we have to see the bigger picture. Right? Why did I bring all that up? Because we mentioned over here, you got to see. We have to see the sheer worthlessness of men. Now, we've had a lot of accomplishments. A lot of accomplishments. You have the fact that, technology gone rampant, gone very quick. Medicine, invention, this, that, all kinds of things. So we want to see, wow, we're at the top here. The reality is not true. Take one microscopic thing and look at the havoc it can reach. Right? God is the one in charge over here. But we forget. Right? Doesn't mean God doesn't understand man's value. He definitely understands man's value. But in this bigger scheme of things, we mentioned, we are a infinitesimally small speck of cosmic dust. That's what we are. Think about this. Think about the human body. The human body, we're not in control. We're not in control. We're not in control, of anything inside. We can control what we eat. We can't control the effect. A person eats, they drink liters and liters of water to be hydrated. When can they say specifically they're going to go to the bathroom? They can't. There's so many things we're not in control, but he's saying, and we said at the beginning, I guess we'll end with this. The fact you look at nature. You take what the Chazon Ish said, a blessed memory. You look at a flower, the beauty of a flower. And what the flower does. Investigate a little bit what a flower does. And what it puts in the world. And the fact that it gives oxygen. And we have plenty of oxygen in the world. Otherwise we die. Think about the greatness of the human bodies. It says in Duties of the Heart. Right? And the function of the body and how the body works. That's the bigger picture. Problem is, we get carried away in the smaller picture. We get carried away what we're going through right now and the difficulties. Which, again, I'm not saying that's not hard. That people don't go through hard things. Everybody does. But we don't see the bigger picture. And then a person's going to say, well, I prayed, I didn't get answered. Doesn't matter if you didn't get answered for this. Probably get answered for other things that God's taking care of in other ways you don't even know. So we have to be like Moshe Rabbeinu. We have to remember. You continue and pray. Prayer never goes to waste. Never goes to waste, even if you feel that your prayer is not going to get answered right now. Or it's not being answered right now. In other ways, so certain things I prayed for didn't get answered, but I got answered in other ways. Other ways I never would have thought of. Never. not in 100 years, not in a million years. So God has his way, but we have to be able to see the good that comes out of it. We have to see, what did I gain? Even, let's say you go through a difficult time. What did I gain? What did I learn? If I didn't learn anything, that's a problem. But we definitely gained. That's for sure. In any case, I guess we'll stop there. We didn't finish the Mishna. We'll probably finish it.
Part 11? We're going to have a part 11?
We're going to have a part 11. I can't imagine part 12, but probably we're going to have a part 11 for sure. Part 12, I can't guarantee, but we'll see what happens. See what happens next week. So probably not next week. Maybe the week after, we'll go back to our normal time because Shabbos is going away, going out
getting later,
early. It's going out earlier now, a little bit earlier now. So next week will be the same time, but it could be the week after that, maybe in a couple weeks. Go back to the regular time.
Excellent, Rabbi. Yeah, I definitely get more inspired to pray with every session you share, and there's always room for improvement for sure. So, thank you for today's lesson in Pirkei Avos. It's beautiful material. Hopefully you folks enjoy it. I want to thank everybody for attending out there in Noah Height World Center social media. So we're going to sign out for now. I will be back in about half an hour with Rabbi Poston Beyond the Seven series. But thank you so much, Rabbi Coffman. We wish you well, and we hope you have a blessed week. And all of you out there have a blessed week also. Bye for now.
Right. You can see me. My picture was okay? Okay. So what happened?